Hey, I'm really glad you're here. Take a moment to get comfortable wherever you are. Let your shoulders relax and let the day gently fall away. You don't need to do anything right now. Just listen and let the story unfold at its own pace. Whenever you're ready, we'll begin.
It's a little cat named Milina, the quiet alley where Milina first opened her eyes. Winter arrived softly in the old town, not with storms or shouting winds, but with a hush so deep that even footsteps seemed to apologize for making sound. Snow fell in thin, patient threads, layering the cobblestones like pale lace woven by invisible hands. The night sky hung low and wide, scattered with dull silver stars that blinked as if they were tired too. Lanterns burned along the streets with amber flames, their glass fogged by cold breath and age. It was the kind of night that belonged to stories, the kind whispered by grandmothers and remembered by walls that had stood for centuries. Behind the stone market square, past the closed iron gates and wooden stalls asleep under cloth, there was an alley few people noticed anymore. It curved gently between leaning houses, their roofs heavy with snow, their windows dark except for one or two candles trembling inside. The time moved slowly here, as if unsure whether it still mattered. This alley had no name written on maps, but everyone who lived nearby knew it by feeling. It smelled of damp stone, old bread, and memories that refused to fade. It was here, on this quiet winter night, that a little cat named Milina first opened her eyes. She was no bigger than a loaf of bread, her body curled tightly against the frozen ground beneath a broken crate. Her fur was soft and uneven, a mix of pale gray and warm cream, like moonlight caught in wool. One ear bent slightly at the tip, giving her a look of permanent curiosity. When she breathed, her chest rose in small, determined movements, as if each breath was a promise to stay. Around her, the alley listened. Milina did not cry when she woke. The cold pressed against her tiny body, sharp and unfamiliar, yet she remained quiet, blinking slowly at the blur of the world. Her eyes were large and dark, reflecting lantern light in trembling circles. She did not know words like winter or night or loneliness. She only knew the ache in her belly, the stiff ground beneath her paws, and the soft echo of something missing. Her mother was gone. Not long before, the alley had held more warmth. A larger cat, scarred by seasons and struggle, had chosen this hidden place for its silence and safety. She had licked Milina clean with a tired tenderness, curling around her to shield her from the cold. But the town was never kind for long. Hunger, fear, and fate had pulled the mother away, leaving the alley to finish the story it had begun. Milina shifted, her small paws stretching instinctively. One touched the edge of the crate, rough with splinters, and she withdrew it quickly, more surprised than hurt. She sniffed the air. The scents were many, layered and confusing. Snow, stone, old wood, something sweet far away. Her ears twitched at distant sounds, the muted creak of a signboard, the far laughter of a tavern closing, the slow toll of a bell marking the hour. She tried to stand. Her legs trembled like thin branches under snow. She wobbled, sat, then tried again, determination blooming quietly inside her. This time she managed 2 careful steps before tumbling sideways into the snow. It was cold, shockingly so, and she squeaked in protest, a sound so small it barely existed. But it was enough. The alley heard her and the night leaned closer. Milina gathered herself again, curling into a tighter ball, her tail wrapped around her body as if she had always known how to protect herself. Above her, the stars watched without judgment. They had seen many beginnings like this, fragile and uncertain, born into corners of the world where hope had to be invented. A faint breeze slipped through the alley, carrying with it a whisper of warmth from somewhere unseen. It smelled like bread, fresh bread. Milina's nose lifted, her whiskers trembling. Hunger stirred, sharper now, louder than fear. The scent drifted away, then returned, playful as a secret. Somewhere beyond the alley, an oven still breathed, stubborn against winter. The little cat did not know it yet, but that smell would become a turning point, a thread that would pull her story forward through nights and seasons. For now, it was simply something gentle in a cold world. Snow continued to fall, quiet and endless. It settled on Milina's fur, melting slowly, leaving her damp but shining. She watched the flakes descend, fascinated by their lazy dance. One landed on her nose, cold and sudden, and she sneezed, startled by herself. The sound echoed softly, swallowed by stone and snow. The alley seemed to smile. The hours passed like slow breaths. Lanterns dimmed. Windows darkened one by one. The town folded itself into sleep. Milina dozed and woke again, drifting between dreams she did not yet understand. In one, she was warm, pressed against a heartbeat larger than her own. In another, she walked without fear beneath a sky that never ended. At some point, a shadow moved at the mouth of the alley. A rat, bold and thin, sniffed the air and paused. It noticed Milina, small and vulnerable, and considered its chances. Milina noticed it too. Fear flared bright and sudden, and she hissed with all the strength her tiny body could summon. It was not much, but it was enough. The rat hesitated, then vanished into darkness, deciding the night held easier meals. Milina shivered, victorious without knowing why. She shifted closer to the wall, pressing her side against the stone. It was cold, but solid, and that solidity comforted her. She listened again, learning the language of the night, distant footsteps, the soft collapse of snow from a roof, the low murmur of wind between buildings. Each sound placed itself carefully inside her, becoming familiar. The moon climbed higher, pale and watchful. Its light reached into the alley, painting Milina in silver. She looked almost unreal then, like something dreamed into existence by the night itself. A little life, breathing steadily, refusing to disappear. Somewhere far beyond the alley, a bell rang again. Another hour passed. Milina stood once more, steadier this time. She took 3 steps, then 4, paws sinking into snow, leaving tiny prints that would be gone by morning. She reached the edge of the alley and peered out, eyes wide. The world beyond was vast and glowing, dangerous and beautiful. Lanterns lined the street like fallen stars. The cold air carried voices, laughter fading, doors closing. She did not go out. Instead, she sat and watched, learning patience before she learned courage. The alley had been her beginning, and for now it was enough. She curled up again, tail tucked, eyes half closed. Sleep came more easily now, wrapped in quiet determination. Winter did not soften. The night did not promise mercy. But Milina slept, small and brave, beneath an ancient sky. And though no one saw her then, no one knew her name, the story had already started. A little cat named Milina had opened her eyes, and the world, unknowingly, had shifted just enough to make room for her. Small pause, big curiosity. Morning did not arrive with sunlight in the old town. It came instead as a thinning of darkness, a quiet agreement between night and day. The sky shifted from deep blue to a softer gray, like worn velvet turned inside out. Snow still rested on rooftops and ledges, untouched and patient. The lanterns along the street burned low, their flames paling as if embarrassed by the coming day. Somewhere far off, a rooster crowed, its voice echoing strangely through stone and cold air. Milina woke before the town did. Her eyes opened slowly, blinking away the heaviness of sleep. For a moment she did not remember where she was, only that she felt colder than before and hungrier too. Then the stone wall, the crate, the snow returned to her awareness. She stretched carefully, each limb extending as far as it dared, tiny claws scraping softly against frozen ground. The sound startled her, and she paused, ears twitching, until she realized the noise belonged to her. That discovery pleased her. She rose unsteadily, legs still thin and unsure, but stronger than the night before. Sleep had given her a small gift, a little more balance, a little more confidence. She took a step, then another, testing herself as if the ground were a question she had to answer correctly. Snow clung to her paws, cold and irritating, and she shook them one by one, fascinated by how they moved. The alley looked different in the morning. Shadows were softer, stretched thin and long. The stones showed their true colors, dark gray and brown, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. The broken crate beside her revealed old nail heads and splintered wood, smelling faintly of rot and history. Above, a window stood open a crack, a curtain stirring gently like a sleepy sigh. Milina tilted her head, studying everything with quiet intensity. The world was large and she was very small, but curiosity pushed against fear like a warm ember refusing to die. She walked, not far at first, just a few careful steps along the wall. Her tail lifted slightly, helping her balance. Every sound made her pause. The distant door creaked. Somewhere water dripped steadily, counting time. She learned to freeze when startled, body low, eyes wide, then move again once danger failed to appear. At the end of the alley, the wider street waited. Milina approached it slowly, paws sinking into deeper snow. The street smelled different, sharper and richer. Smoke lingered faintly in the air, mixed with iron, leather, and something delicious that made her stomach tighten. Bread again, always bread. The smell felt closer now, fuller, as if the town itself were waking up hungry. She reached the edge and stopped. The street stretched left and right, lined with tall stone buildings that leaned toward each other like old friends sharing secrets. Shutters were closed, but light leaked through cracks. A man passed by carrying a bundle of firewood, boots crunching loudly. Milina flattened herself against the ground, heart racing, breath caught tight inside her chest. The man did not see her. That realization was powerful. She was small enough to be invisible. Fear softened slightly, turning into something else. Possibility. She stepped back into the alley and released a tiny breath she did not know she was holding. Her world was already expanding, but she sensed it must be done slowly, piece by careful piece. Hunger returned, insistent now. Her belly growled, a strange hollow sound that startled her again. She sniffed the ground, then the air, nose twitching rapidly. The scent of bread pulled her forward, not toward the street, but deeper into the maze of narrow passages branching from the alley. She followed it. The path twisted between buildings, stones uneven beneath her paws. Icicles hung from roofs like frozen teeth, dripping occasionally onto the snow below. Milina learned quickly to avoid them, darting aside when she heard the faint warning crack. Each successful escape made her bolder. She passed a door with peeling paint, blue once, now gray with age. The mouse scurried across her path, and instinct flared. She pounced clumsily, paws landing where the mouse had been a heartbeat before. It vanished into a crack, leaving Milina sitting awkwardly, confused and offended. She sniffed the spot, then sneezed. The failure did not discourage her. It merely taught her that the world moved fast and she would have to learn faster. The smell of bread grew stronger as she reached a wider lane. Here the snow was thinner, trampled by many feet. Ash darkened the ground in places. As a low building stood ahead, its chimney breathing out pale smoke that curled lazily into the sky. The scent pouring from it was warm and rich, wrapping around Milina like an invisible blanket. The bakery. She did not know that word, but she knew the feeling it gave her. Safety. Warmth, food. She approached the building cautiously, circling it from a distance. The walls were brick, old and blackened by years of fire. A small window near the back glowed faintly, fogged from the heat inside. Milina crept closer. Near the wall, crumbs littered the ground, half buried in snow. Old crusts, broken bits, discarded without thought. To Milina, they were treasure. She sniffed them carefully, then bit down. The bread was hard and cold, but the taste filled her mouth with comfort. She chewed slowly, savoring every crumb. For the first time since opening her eyes, her hunger eased. She ate until the crumbs were gone, licking the ground afterwards just in case. Then she sat back, belly rounder now, and cleaned her paws with serious concentration. Each lick was deliberate, careful, as if this ritual mattered deeply. A sound startled her. As the bakery door opened briefly, releasing a burst of warmth and golden light. A man stepped out, shaking ash from his hands. He was large, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a thick wool coat dusted with flour. He glanced down, frowned slightly, then shrugged and went back inside, closing the door behind him. Milina froze. Her heart hammered painfully against her ribs. She waited long moments, barely breathing, until she was sure the door would not open again. When she finally relaxed, she realized something important. The man had not chased her away. That fact settled inside her like a promise. The day continued its slow unfolding. More people passed, carts rattled, voices rose and fell. Milina stayed close to the bakery wall, watching, learning. She discovered that humans were loud and blind, often missing what was right at their feet. She learned which sounds meant danger and which could be ignored. She learned that warmth spilled from doors, and kindness sometimes came in the shape of forgotten food. As the sun climbed weakly behind clouds, Milina grew sleepy. She found a sheltered spot between stacked sacks near the bakery and curled up, tucking her nose beneath her tail. The stone beneath her was warmer here, kissed by heat from the ovens. Snow melted nearby, dripping softly. She slept. Her dreams came quickly. She dreamed of running without slipping, of chasing mice that did not escape, of a place where winter never bit too hard. She dreamed of a voice, gentle and low, though she did not know whose it was. When she woke again, the light had shifted. As afternoon leaned toward evening, shadows lengthening. The bakery's warmth remained, steady and reliable. Milina stretched, feeling stronger than before, and yawned, showing tiny teeth to no one at all. She stepped out again, curiosity renewed. This time she ventured a little farther from her hiding place, circling the building, peeking into gaps, memorizing smells. Each step felt like a victory. The town no longer seemed endless. It was a puzzle, and she was beginning to understand its pieces. As night returned, lanterns flared to life once more. Snow fell again, light and steady. Milina watched it drift down, unafraid now. She knew where warmth lived. She knew where crumbs appeared. She knew where she could sleep without freezing. She returned to the alley only briefly, sniffing the crate where she had been born. It smelled faintly of her, of beginning. She rubbed her cheek against it once, marking it softly, then turned away. Her world had grown. With small pause and big curiosity, Milina padded back toward the glow of the bakery, unaware that each step forward was quietly weaving her into the heart of the town. The night welcomed her, the old bakery at the corner of Hope Street. By the time night fully returned to the old town, the bakery had become a small island of warmth floating in a sea of cold. Snow thickened on rooftops and window ledges, softening the sharp lines of stone and wood. Lantern light shimmered on the street, reflected in thin layers of ice that had begun to form where melted snow refroze. The town settled into its evening rhythm, slower now, gentler, as if everyone moved with care not to disturb the night. Milina waited near the back wall of the bakery, her body tucked neatly into the shallow hollow she had discovered earlier. The stone beneath her still carried a whisper of warmth from the ovens inside, enough to keep the cold from biting too sharply. She watched the world with half-closed eyes, ears flicking at every sound. She had learned much in a single day, and the knowledge made her feel older than she truly was. The bakery breathed steadily. From time to time, the door opened, releasing a glow of gold and the low murmur of human voices. The scent of bread grew stronger in waves, then faded again. Each time it returned, Milina's whiskers twitched, and her stomach stirred in hopeful anticipation. She no longer panicked at the sudden light or sound. Instead, she observed, still and patient, learning the patterns of this place that already felt important. A woman passed by carrying a basket of apples, her cloak pulled tight against the cold. And two children ran after each other, laughter ringing briefly before disappearing down the street. Somewhere a lute played, slow and wistful, its notes floating above the rooftops like drifting snowflakes. The town was alive, even in winter, and Milina felt herself becoming part of its quiet pulse. When the bakery door opened again, the baker stepped out with a sack over his shoulder. He paused, adjusted his grip, then set the sack down near the wall. Flour dusted the air around him like pale smoke. He wiped his hands on his apron, glanced toward the street, and sighed, a sound heavy with the weariness of a long day. Milina did not move. She remained a small shadow against stone, breath shallow, body low. Her heart beat fast but steady. She had learned that sudden movement invited trouble. Stillness, she had discovered, often meant safety. The baker finished his task and went back inside, leaving the sack where it was. Milina waited. She counted heartbeats she did not know how to count. When no further danger appeared, she crept closer. The sack smelled of grain and crumbs. It was not food in the way she needed, but it promised something. She sniffed along its edge and found, just beneath it, a few pieces of bread that had fallen unnoticed. Softer than the morning's crusts, these were still warm at the center. Milina ate slowly, savoring each bite, her eyes closing in brief moments of contentment. Warmth spread through her chest, quiet and deep. As she finished, snow began to fall again, thicker now, muffling the sounds of the street. The world grew smaller, softer. Milina shook her fur lightly, sending snowflakes scattering, then settled back into her hollow. She curled her tail around her body and watched the flakes drift down, each one unique, each one disappearing the moment it touched stone or fur. Sleep tugged at her, but she resisted it at first, feeling oddly alert. Something about this place held her attention. The bakery was more than a source of food. It felt like a landmark, a corner of the world where paths crossed and stories brushed against one another. Though she did not have words for such thoughts, she felt their shape inside her. The night deepened. Stars emerged between clouds, faint but persistent. The moon climbed, pale and distant, its light turning snow into silver. Milina yawned, a wide, silent yawn, and finally surrendered to sleep. She dreamed of warmth again, but this time it was different. She dreamed of sitting beside a hearth, fire crackling, shadows dancing on walls. She dreamed of hands, careful and gentle, setting down a bowl. She dreamed of a voice humming softly, a tune that wrapped around her like a promise. When she woke, the dream lingered. The bakery was quiet now, its door closed, its windows dark. The warmth beneath her had faded, but not entirely. Milina rose, stretched, and padded around the building, testing the night air. The street was nearly empty, the town folded inward, resting. She ventured a little farther this time, moving down Hope Street, where the bakery stood. The lanterns cast long pools of light on the snow, and Milina learned to step between them, comfortable in shadow. Her paws left delicate prints behind her, a quiet record of her passing. At the corner, she stopped. Hope Street curved gently there, leading toward a small square where an old fountain slept beneath ice. Beyond it, the town sloped upward toward the walls and towers that guarded it. Milina looked, memorizing the shape of the place. This corner, she sensed, mattered. It was where warmth met cold, where hunger met kindness, where her path had bent toward survival. A door opened nearby. Milina froze as a woman stepped out of a narrow house across the street. She was wrapped in a thick shawl, her hair pulled back loosely. She carried a small pail, steam rising faintly from it. She moved slowly, carefully, as if each step required thought. Milina watched her with wide eyes. The woman did not notice the cat at first. She walked a few steps, then paused, glancing toward the bakery. Her gaze drifted lower, caught by movement or perhaps by instinct. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, the world held still. The woman's expression softened, surprise giving way to something gentler. She did not speak. She did not move suddenly. She simply crouched slightly, setting the pail down beside her and looked. Milina's heart raced. Every lesson from the day whispered caution. Humans were large. Humans were unpredictable. Yet something about this woman felt different. Her eyes were tired but kind, her posture open, unthreatening. She did not reach out. The woman smiled. It was small and fleeting, but it changed the air between them. Milina took one step back, then stopped. She did not run. She watched. Curiosity and caution tangled tightly together. After a moment, the woman stood again, leaving the pail where it was, and returned inside without a sound. The door closed softly behind her. Milina remained where she was, stunned by the encounter. She sniffed the air, then crept toward the pail. Inside, the scent of warm milk rose gently, undeniable and inviting. She hesitated only a second before dipping her tongue in. The milk was warm, not hot, not cold, perfect. Milina drank, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. Each sip felt like kindness given without demand. She drank until her belly was full and her breathing slowed. When she finished, she sat back and licked her lips, eyes half closed in quiet bliss. She did not know the woman had seen her hunger and remembered a time when kindness had mattered just as much. She only knew that the night had offered her something good. Snow continued to fall. When Milina finally curled up to sleep again, it was closer to the corner of Hope Street than the alley of her birth. She tucked herself against the wall, warm and safe enough. Above her, the sky stretched wide and ancient, stars watching silently. The bakery stood behind her, dark now but steady, a promise waiting for morning. Milina slept, wrapped in dreams of warmth and gentle voices, unaware that her story had just crossed its first true threshold. The old town breathed around her, and for the first time it breathed her in as well, when kindness came in the shape of crumbs. Morning arrived like a soft thought rather than a declaration. The sky lightened slowly, the darkness thinning as if it were being gently brushed aside. Snow still fell, though more lazily now, drifting down in wide, unhurried flakes. The town did not wake all at once. It stirred in fragments, a door creaking open somewhere, the distant clatter of a bucket, the muffled cough of a chimney clearing its throat. Milina woke beneath the wall on Hope Street, her body warm despite the cold air. For a moment she lay still, listening. The night's quiet had not fully left, but it had changed its shape. Sounds were clearer now, closer. Life was returning. She stretched, arching her back until it trembled slightly, then relaxed with a small, satisfied sigh. Her belly was pleasantly full, and the memory of warm milk lingered like a gentle dream she had carried into waking. She licked her paws carefully, cleaning them with the seriousness of a creature who understood that order mattered in a confusing world. The pail was gone. Milina noticed it only after she stood and looked around. Where it had rested the night before, there was now only snow marked by faint footprints. She sniffed the spot, puzzled but calm. The kindness had not vanished, it had simply moved on. Somehow she felt sure of that. The bakery stirred to life behind her. A low rumble vibrated through the wall as ovens were lit again. The scent of yeast and warmth crept into the air, stronger than before. Milina's ears lifted. Her whiskers quivered. She turned toward the familiar smell and padded back to the place she now thought of as hers, the shallow hollow by the warm stone. As the morning grew brighter, people began to pass along Hope Street. Some walked briskly, heads bowed against the cold. Others lingered, stopping to talk, their breath blooming in pale clouds. Milina watched them all, her eyes alert, her body still. She had learned the power of observation. It kept her safe. It taught her what to expect. A boy came by carrying a basket of rolls from the bakery, the cloth draped loosely over the top. As he walked, one roll slipped free and fell into the snow, rolling to a stop near the wall. The boy did not notice. He laughed at something a friend said and continued on his way. Milina stared at the fallen roll. It was soft, pale, and perfect. Steam still rose faintly from its cracked surface. She approached it slowly, half expecting it to disappear or be taken away. When it did not, she sniffed it, then bit into it with careful teeth. Warmth flooded her mouth. She ate with deep focus, tearing off small pieces, savoring each one. This was not survival food scraped from the ground. This was generosity shaped like bread. When she finished, she sat back and licked her whiskers, eyes shining. Kindness, she was learning, did not always announce itself. It often arrived quietly, unnoticed even by the one who offered it. The day unfolded gently. Milina remained near the bakery, retreating to shadow when carts rattled past, stepping out again when the street calmed. She learned the rhythm of the place, when crumbs appeared, when doors opened, when it was safest to move. She discovered that the bakery's back door sometimes opened just long enough for warmth to spill out, carrying with it the low murmur of voices and the comforting thud of dough being worked. At midday, the woman from the night before appeared again. She stepped out of her narrow house, shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, and paused on the threshold. Her eyes drifted naturally toward the bakery wall, as if drawn there without thought. When she saw Milina, sitting quietly and watching the world, she smiled. This time she spoke. Her voice was soft and low, shaped by tiredness but warmed by something else. She said words Milina did not understand, but the tone mattered more than meaning. The woman crouched slightly, careful not to loom, and reached into her pocket. Milina tensed, ready to flee. But the woman did not reach toward her. Instead, she placed something on the ground and pushed it gently forward. A small piece of bread, broken by hand, still fresh. Then she stood and went on her way. Milina waited. She waited until the woman was gone, until the street returned to its usual flow. Then she approached the bread and ate. It tasted different somehow, not because it was made differently, but because it had been given with intention. Something inside Milina shifted. She did not know what trust was, but she felt its first stirrings, delicate and uncertain. She cleaned her paws and settled back into her hollow, watching the world with new eyes. Snow melted slowly through the afternoon, turning to slush near the bakery where warmth reached the street. Water dripped steadily from eaves, tapping out a slow, patient rhythm. Milina listened to it, letting the sound settle her. As evening approached, clouds gathered again, heavy and low. The sky darkened earlier than expected, winter claiming the day before it was ready to let go. The lanterns were lit once more, their glow reflected in wet stone. Milina felt the change instinctively. She grew restless, pacing a little, circling her spot. Hunger returned, quieter this time, less urgent. She knew food would come. That knowledge itself was a gift. The bakery door opened wide, and the baker stepped out, this time carrying a bucket. He dumped its contents into a barrel near the wall, scraps, peels, crusts. Milina watched from a distance as he worked, his movements tired but practiced. When he finished, he noticed her. He paused. For a moment, Milina thought he might shout or chase her away. She lowered herself, ready to run, but the baker only stared, then chuckled softly. He reached into the bucket, pulled out a crust, and tossed it gently toward her. It landed a short distance away. Milina did not move at first. The baker shrugged and went back inside, the door closing behind him. After a long pause, Milina crept forward and took the crust. It was hard but edible. More than that, it was offered. She gnawed on it happily, tail flicking with quiet pleasure. That night, as snow fell once more, Milina slept deeply. She dreamed of crumbs falling like snowflakes, of warm walls and gentle hands, of a world that was still cold but no longer cruel. As in her dream, she walked confidently through the town, unseen but welcomed, a small presence woven into the fabric of everyday life. When she woke briefly in the middle of the night, she heard footsteps nearby. The woman's door opened softly. A shadow moved. As the pail appeared again, placed carefully near the wall, Milina watched, her eyes glowing faintly in the lantern light. The woman did not look directly at her this time. She only paused, rested a hand briefly against the wall, and then returned inside. The door closed without a sound. Milina approached the pail and drank. Warm milk soothed her, easing the sharp edges of hunger and cold. She drank slowly, respectfully, as if aware that this ritual mattered. When she finished, she sat beside the pail for a while, simply being. Snow covered her tracks again, erasing the marks of her small journeys. But something permanent had begun to form, invisible yet strong. Kindness had found her. It came in the shape of crumbs, of milk, of quiet gestures given without expectation. It came wrapped in the rhythms of an old town that still remembered how to care in small ways. Milina curled up beneath the bakery wall, her body relaxed, her breathing slow and steady. The night sky stretched above her, ancient and endless, stars blinking softly through drifting clouds. She slept knowing, without knowing how she knew, that she was no longer alone in the world, and the world, in its quiet corners, was beginning to make space for her. Nights of rain and a cat who refused to give up. Winter loosened its grip only slightly, just enough to change the shape of the cold. Snow did not stop falling all at once. Instead, it learned to melt, to turn heavy and wet, to slip from rooftops in sudden sighs. As the air thickened, carrying the promise of rain, and the sky grew lower, pressing down on the town like a gray wool blanket. Nights came earlier, darker, and softer in sound. Milina felt the change before she understood it. The stone beneath her paws grew damp. The hollow by the bakery wall no longer held warmth as faithfully as before. Water gathered in shallow pools along Hope Street, reflecting lantern light in trembling streaks of gold. The sense of the town deepened, becoming richer, heavier, harder to separate. The first night of rain arrived without ceremony. Milina was half asleep when it began, a quiet tapping that grew into a steady whisper. Droplets slipped down the wall beside her, soaking the fur along her back. She stirred, startled, then rose quickly, shaking herself. The rain was cold, colder than snow, and it clung to her in an uncomfortable way. She moved closer to the wall, pressing herself tight against the stone, but it was not enough. Water crept into her hollow, stealing its shelter. Milina paced, uncertain. As the bakery was closed, its warmth sealed away. The street was empty, the lanterns blurred by falling rain. For the first time in days, fear returned. Milina darted beneath a cart parked nearby, crouching low between its wheels. The ground there was muddy, but it offered cover. Rain drummed above her, loud and relentless. She curled in on herself, tail tight, ears flattened. Her body shook, not just from cold, but from the sudden understanding that safety could change. She waited. Time passed strangely in the rain. Sounds blurred together. As the world narrowed to the steady fall of water and the slow, patient ache in her bones. Hunger stirred faintly, but she ignored it. Survival demanded stillness now. When the rain finally softened, Milina crept out from beneath the cart. Her fur was soaked and heavy, clinging to her thin body. She shook herself hard, droplets flying, but the chill remained. She padded back toward the bakery wall, only to find it slick and unwelcoming. She did not cry. Instead, she sat and thought in the way animals think, with instinct and memory. She remembered the alley where she had been born. Narrow, sheltered, dry. Milina turned and walked. The journey back felt longer than before. Rain still fell, light but persistent, and the streets were darker than she remembered. Lanterns reflected in puddles, creating false paths of light that shifted under her paws. She moved carefully, pausing often, ears straining. At the mouth of the alley, she hesitated. It looked smaller now, darker, as if it belonged to someone else. But it was familiar, and familiarity mattered. She slipped inside, her body brushing the stone walls, and found the broken crate where her story had begun. It was drier here. Milina crawled beneath it, pressing herself into the corner where wood and stone met. The space was tight but protective. Rain tapped against the crate above her, muted now, distant. She curled into a ball and rested her chin on her paws. Sleep came slowly. She dreamed of running through rain that did not soak her, of warm light behind doors she could not open, of crumbs dissolving in water before she could reach them. Her body twitched softly as she slept, working through the night's lessons. Morning came gray and damp. Milina woke stiff and hungry. The rain had stopped, but the cold lingered in everything it touched. She crawled out from beneath the crate and shook herself again, fur fluffing slightly as it dried. The alley smelled of wet stone and old leaves. She set out early. The bakery was quieter than usual. Fewer people passed. The air felt heavy, as if the town itself was tired. Milina waited by the wall, but crumbs did not appear as quickly as before. The door stayed closed longer. Hunger pressed sharper now, gnawing at her insides. She waited anyway. Impatience had kept her alive this long. At last, the baker emerged, his face drawn, his movements slower. He carried a smaller bucket today. When he dumped its contents, there were fewer scraps than usual. Milina watched, her heart sinking. Still, she approached carefully and ate what she could, even the hard pieces she might have ignored before. When she finished, hunger still lingered. The woman did not appear that morning. Milina stayed near the bakery all day, moving little, conserving energy. Rain returned briefly in the afternoon, a thin mist that dampened everything. She sheltered beneath an overhang, watching the street through half-closed eyes. By evening, the cold deepened. Milina curled tightly against the wall, shivering despite herself. The warmth she had come to rely on felt distant now. She slept fitfully, waking often, her dreams restless. The second night of rain was worse. Wind joined the water, driving it sideways. Lantern flames flickered and hissed. The town retreated inward, doors shut tight. Milina sought shelter again beneath the cart, then beneath a bench, but the ground was soaked everywhere. She was cold, she was hungry, she was tired, and still she did not give up. She moved when she had to, waited when she could, and trusted that morning would come, because it always had before. In the deepest part of the night, when the rain fell hardest, she crawled back to the alley, to the crate, to the beginning. There she slept. When morning came again, pale and uncertain, Milina woke to a different sound. Footsteps, careful, slow. She peered out from beneath the crate, eyes wide. The woman stood at the alley's mouth. Her shawl was pulled tight, her hair damp with mist. She looked down the alley, scanning the shadows. When her eyes found Milina, crouched and small, her breath caught. "Oh," she whispered. Milina froze, ready to flee, but the woman did not move closer. She knelt instead, lowering herself to the cold stone. Her face held worry now and something else, recognition. "You came back here," she murmured, as if speaking to herself. She set something on the ground and slid it forward, a cloth folded thick, and beside it a small bowl. Milina watched, torn between fear and hope. The woman stood and stepped back, giving space. She waited. Slowly, Milina emerged from beneath the crate. She sniffed the cloth. It smelled of home, of warmth, of the woman. She stepped onto it, feeling its softness beneath her paws, and then bent to drink. The milk was warm. Relief washed through her, deep and sudden. She drank, then curled onto the cloth without thinking, her body sinking into comfort she had never known. The woman watched silently, eyes shining, then rose and left, her footsteps soft as snow. Milina slept. She slept deeply, without dreams, wrapped in warmth and kindness, and the quiet certainty that even rain could not erase her place in the world. Nights would still be hard. Winter was not finished with her yet. But Milina had proven something to herself, in the way animals prove things without words. She could endure, and she would. The woman with the soft voice and tired eyes. The days after the rain were colder still, sharper, as if winter wanted to remind everyone who ruled the streets and rooftops. Snow lay thicker on the cobblestones, heavy and silent. The alley where Milina had first opened her eyes had changed, softened by frost, yet it remained a shelter she knew by heart. Every corner, every crack in the stone, every hollow beneath a broken crate had a memory. But now another presence began to shape her days, one gentle, warm, and unforgettable. The woman returned that morning. She moved slowly, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, hair damp from snow or mist. There was a softness in her gait, a quiet care in every step that drew Milina's attention immediately. The little cat crouched beneath the wall, watching. Her instincts whispered caution, yet curiosity, stronger than fear, pulled her forward. The woman knelt carefully on the cold stones, folding her knees beneath her, her tired eyes meeting Milina's with a gaze that spoke without words. She did not speak loudly or move abruptly. She simply sat, still and welcoming, letting the silence stretch like a bridge between them. Milina tilted her head, whiskers twitching. There was something about the warmth in the woman's eyes that reminded her of early mornings beneath the alley crate, of the first milk, of the crumbs that had fed her. It was unspoken. It was quiet. It was trust forming slowly, brick by brick. The woman reached into her coat pocket. Milina's muscles tensed, ready to flee, yet she stayed. Out came a small cloth, folded with care, and a bowl, clean and waiting. The woman placed them gently before Milina and stepped back just enough to offer room. No words were necessary. The gesture alone spoke volumes. Milina approached cautiously, sniffing first the cloth, then the bowl. Milk steamed faintly, rising into the cold air. She bent down and drank slowly, savoring each warm drop. Her belly pressed against the soft cloth beneath her, and for the first time, she allowed herself to relax completely in the presence of a human. The woman's gaze never wavered. It was patient, unhurried, full of an understanding Milina could feel though not name. When the bowl was empty, Milina licked her paws carefully and curled on the cloth. She did not move even as snowflakes drifted down around her. The woman remained kneeling, hands folded, tired eyes soft but watchful. There was a rhythm now, the quiet of snow, the warmth of cloth, the trust being built silently between a small cat and a human who had already begun to care. Days passed like this. The woman visited consistently. Sometimes she brought milk, sometimes bread. Sometimes she only knelt and watched, her presence a comforting constant. Milina learned to recognize the sound of her footsteps, the sway of her shawl, the scent of her hair and coat. She learned that the soft voice of the woman, though rarely used in speech, carried a tone that reassured even without words. Milina grew bolder. She began to follow the woman when she left the alley, keeping a careful distance. She observed her routines, the gentle way she swept snow from the threshold, how she tended the garden behind the narrow house, the careful placement of each object, the way her eyes softened when she looked at the people passing by. Each detail was a thread in a larger tapestry that Milina, in her own instinctive way, began to understand. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the snow in pale shades of gold and pink, the woman spoke to Milina for the first time. Her voice was low and melodic, careful and patient. The words were unfamiliar to Milina, yet the tone carried reassurance. She listened intently, ears forward, eyes wide. Every inflection felt like a hand reaching out, a promise rather than a command. From that moment, a bond deepened. Milina began to anticipate the woman's presence. She would emerge from the alley to meet her, brush against her legs, follow her movements at a respectful distance. Nights were no longer entirely lonely. Snowfall, cold stone, and empty streets became bearable because there was always warmth waiting at the end. A soft voice, tired eyes, a bowl of milk, a gentle hand. Winter nights continued to challenge her, with biting winds and thick frost. Yet each night ended with the same ritual. Milina curled on her cloth beside the alley wall and felt the silent reassurance of the woman's attention. In this quiet companionship, trust flourished slowly but surely. Milina began to understand, in ways only animals can, that some humans were different. Some humans offered protection without expectation, kindness without demand. She had known hardship and hunger, nights of fear and rain, but she had also begun to experience what it meant to be cared for. Each soft glance, each gesture of patience, each small offering of food was a lesson in the world's quiet generosity. The town continued its rhythm, indifferent to the life of one small cat, yet Milina's world had expanded. It was no longer defined solely by survival or instinct. It was shaped by the woman's presence, by moments of warmth and safety, by the quiet understanding that trust, once earned, could become as vital as food or shelter. And so, beneath the pale winter sky, as snow fell silently over cobblestones and rooftops, Milina stayed close, observing, learning, growing. The woman, with her soft voice and tired eyes, became the axis of her small universe, a human who did not just feed or shelter, but who offered the invisible scaffolding of trust, the foundation for a new life. The alley, the bakery, the snow, the cold, they had shaped her. But the woman had changed her, slowly, gently, irrevocably, and Milina, small and determined, would never forget, learning what home feels like. Winter's grip remained steady over the town, but in the alley where Milina had first been born, warmth had begun to take root. It was not just the faint heat from the bakery or the softened stone walls of her old shelter. It was something deeper, quieter, and infinitely more profound. Milina had begun to understand, in the small, deliberate way only creatures of instinct can, that home was not merely a place. Home was a feeling, and she was learning it for the first time. The woman's visits had become the axis around which Milina's days now turned. Each morning, she would wait near the wall, ears twitching at the faintest sound of approaching steps. When the woman appeared, Milina's heart would leap, though she maintained her cautious distance, always careful to honor the silent boundaries that had taken weeks to establish. Milk would appear in the bowl, bread perhaps left in crumbs beside it, and the soft touch of the woman's hand on the ground or a gentle word carried a warmth far greater than the most generous crust or drop of milk. At first, Milina had only come for food. Hunger was simple, urgent, undeniable, but over time, necessity gave way to curiosity, then trust, and then the fragile, quiet threads of attachment. She began to linger after feeding, observing the woman as she moved about her small home and garden, learning the rhythm of her life. Milina discovered the soft scrape of the broom against the frozen ground, the faint creak of wooden shutters as they opened to let light in, the slow, careful folding of cloth, and the placement of objects with intentionality. Each movement spoke to her in ways the world outside never had, of safety, order, and a quiet constancy she had never known. One particularly cold morning, when the snow lay thick across rooftops and draped the town in ghostly white, Milina ventured further than she had dared before. She padded carefully along the alley, paws leaving delicate prints in the frost, until she came to the small wooden gate that separated the woman's garden from the street. The smell of earth and herbs mingled with the warmth of the bakery and the faint scent of wood smoke. Milina hesitated at the threshold, uncertain, but a low hum of the woman's voice, soft, melodic, and steady, urged her forward. She stepped into the garden. It was a revelation. The garden was modest, yet alive in ways the stone streets of the town could not be. The frost-tipped herbs bristled beneath the weight of snow, and tiny evergreens stood like watchful sentinels. Milina sniffed at the ground, tasting soil and snow and something unnameable, something that felt like belonging. She realized then that warmth was not only to be found in walls or cloth or bowls of milk. It was in the rhythm of care, in repetition, in small acts that signaled constancy. His home was the garden as much as the alley, the hand as much as the wall, the voice as much as the food. The woman noticed her movement and smiled. "Ah, there you are," she murmured, kneeling low to let Milina approach. This time there was no bowl in hand, only the invitation of presence. Milina circled her carefully, brushing briefly against her legs, an act of trust that had been impossible weeks ago. The woman spoke softly, her voice low and rhythmic, words Milina could not understand, but the meaning of which penetrated the heart more than any spoken language. She was safe, she was welcome, she belonged. Days turned into weeks. Milina's life took on a rhythm she had never known in the alley of her birth. Snow fell and melted, lanterns flickered against the walls, ovens warmed the bakery with rich, golden heat, and the woman appeared every day, sometimes with food, sometimes with quiet presence, always consistent. Milina began to sleep in the garden, curled in the shade of frost-covered shrubs, basking in the faint warmth from the house behind her. She had begun to understand the contours of safety, which paths were secure, where warmth lingered, which places allowed her to rest without vigilance. She had begun to understand what home felt like. She no longer flinched when humans passed. She watched children laugh in the streets and merchants shout across cobbled lanes with interest rather than fear. Each interaction, observed from her small vantage point, was a lesson. Some humans were sudden and frightening. Some were gentle without even trying. Home was learning to distinguish between the two, learning when it was possible to relax, learning to trust the rhythms of life. One twilight, as the snow softened into mist, the woman came out to the garden and called softly. Milina approached, tail flicking, ears alert but relaxed. The woman crouched and extended a hand, palm up. It was not a command, not an expectation. It was an offer, a quiet gesture. Trust me, you are safe. Milina pressed her small head against the hand, letting the warmth seep into her fur. She purred softly, a sound that had not existed in the alley, that had not existed in the night before kindness arrived. She understood then that home was not just warmth, not just food, not just shelter. It was this, the slow, deliberate recognition that she belonged somewhere. Winter continued its reign, but Milina did not mind. The snowflakes fell on her fur, cold but fleeting, easily brushed aside when she nestled against the woman's legs. Nights that had once been frightening were now punctuated with gentle light, the distant sounds of human life, and the promise that even in cold and darkness, she had a place to rest. The alley remained her history, the bakery her sustenance, but the garden, the soft voice, and the careful hand had given her something more: belonging. Milina's world had expanded, yet it had also contracted to the essentials. She had learned to move confidently, to watch quietly, to eat when offered, to sleep when safe, to trust in a rhythm she had never imagined possible. And in that small, carefully woven life, she discovered something profound. That home is not a single place or a single thing, but the sum of care, constancy, and gentle recognition. It is the space where one can rest without fear, where even a small cat can be seen, known, and valued. Evenings in the garden became a favorite time for Milina. She would sit on a frost-covered stone ledge, tail wrapped neatly around her paws, eyes half closed as the woman tidied the garden, humming softly to herself. Lanterns glowed, snow reflected the faint light, and the town seemed to pause in reverent silence. Milina felt a deep contentment settle over her. She had endured hunger, rain, and cold. She had survived nights of uncertainty. And now, in the quiet, soft glow of a winter night, she had learned what it truly meant to feel at home. Home was not perfect. There would be cold. There would be hunger again. But for the first time, Milina knew the joy of stability, the comfort of warmth given freely, the quiet security of a life cared for by a presence both gentle and unhurried. She had discovered a rhythm to trust, a sanctuary she could claim without fear. She had learned in the deepest, most instinctive way what home felt like. And in the soft snow and quiet light, Milina purred, small and full, her heart tucked into a space that was at last her own. Milina explores the town. The morning arrived with a fragile hush, snow stretching white and soft over the rooftops, cobblestones, and alleys of the old town. Milina, now more confident than ever, stretched on the warm cloth near the hearth. The firelight flickered across her fur, creating shadows that danced like tiny specters, and for the first time, she felt the full weight and freedom of her small world. is no longer confined by fear, hunger, or cold. She was ready to explore beyond the alley and the garden, to discover the hidden nooks and quiet rhythms of the town she had come to call home. She ventured out first into the alley, soft paws leaving prints in the fresh snow. The bakery wall stood behind her, familiar and steady, a reminder that warmth and sustenance were never far away. Beyond the alley, the streets were wide yet empty in the early morning, lanterns unlit, their golden glow replaced by pale winter light. Each step Milina took echoed lightly, the soft crunch of snow beneath her tiny claws marking a trail she alone understood. The town revealed itself gradually. Narrow lanes wound between stone houses with steep roofs, their wooden shutters dusted with frost. Chimneys breathed smoke into the gray sky, carrying the scent of hearth fires and baked bread. From time to time, a shop would open, a blacksmith's forge, a small apothecary, a tailor arranging cloth in the window. Milina paused to watch, her amber eyes tracking the movements of the townspeople who bustled inside and outside their daily routines. She had learned the difference between motion that signaled danger and motion that heralded life. The first place she ventured with care was the central square. It was a wide space surrounded by taller buildings, their eaves carved with delicate patterns, stone faces, and ornate ironwork. In the center stood a fountain, frozen over with ice, yet still hinting at water beneath. The sound of trickling liquid occasionally reached Milina when the ice cracked or melted in sunbeams. Birds hopped on the edges of the fountain, their tiny claws scraping against frost as they chirped and pecked at crumbs from hurried passers-by. Milina watched quietly, learning their patterns, marveling at their fearless energy, and feeling a sense of camaraderie with these small, persistent creatures who thrived despite winter's chill. From the square, Milina ventured further, slipping down side streets and narrow alleys. She discovered a small bridge over a shallow stream, the water beneath moving sluggishly, half frozen, its surface glimmering like shards of silver under pale sunlight. She padded across the bridge carefully, tail raised for balance, then paused to drink from the clear water where it pooled in small pockets. The taste was crisp and cold, refreshing, and the movement of water against ice fascinated her. She watched for a long time, entranced, learning that even frozen places had life beneath the surface. The market street was next. Though quiet in early hours, it was easy to imagine the bustle that would come later. Wooden stalls lined the street, stacked with bundles of herbs, sacks of flour, dried meats, and colorful fabrics. A few shopkeepers swept the snow from their doorways, their breaths rising in pale clouds. Milina skirted along the edges, her paws silent on the cobblestones. She noted the smells, the patterns of motion, the small details that would guide her once the crowd arrived. The way baskets teetered on counters, the squeak of a cartwheel, the glint of brass coins handled carelessly. By mid-morning, she had discovered a hidden passageway that led to the edge of the town. Here, the streets were narrower, less traveled. Houses leaned over the road as if whispering to one another, shutters half open, smoke curling from chimneys. Milina paused at the entrance, sniffing the air. The faint scent of fur and warmth reached her. Perhaps another cat had been here recently. She moved cautiously, noting that these streets were quieter, less predictable. Yet she felt no fear now, only curiosity, honed by weeks of careful observation, patient waiting, and cautious exploration. In one particularly shadowed alley, Milina found a pile of discarded crates and old cloth. She inspected them thoroughly, sniffing each corner, probing beneath wood that had once been damp from rain. She discovered crumbs hidden under a crate, remnants of yesterday's bakery offerings. With careful, deliberate bites, she consumed them, savoring each morsel. Hunger was no longer urgent. It was a measured reminder of life, not a force that demanded panic. This was an important lesson she had learned. Patience and observation often brought more reward than frantic searching. She continued her exploration until the sun reached its peak. Snow began to melt in weak sunbeams, dripping from eaves, forming tiny rivulets along the streets. Milina paused at one street corner where the frost shimmered in intricate patterns, her reflection fractured in the ice beneath her paws. She lifted a paw experimentally, testing the strength of the frozen layer, and then hopped across to a patch of stone now clear of frost. Each movement was careful but confident, a blend of instinct, memory, and curiosity that had grown sharper with experience. By afternoon, Milina had discovered a small, forgotten garden tucked behind a crumbling stone wall. A wooden gate hung slightly ajar, revealing patches of dried herbs, a few frost-hardened vegetables, and a scattering of wildflowers pressed under snow. She padded inside, marveling at the subtle scents, the mixture of decay and life. Tiny footprints of birds and perhaps a hedgehog crisscrossed the soil, telling her the secret lives of those who had come before. Milina pressed her nose into the ground, inhaling every layer of scent, learning, cataloging, claiming it as part of the expanding map of her town. When the woman appeared in the alley near the garden, Milina ran to meet her, leaping lightly onto her lap, tail curling contentedly. The woman laughed softly, brushing snowflakes from her shawl, and held her close. "You've been busy," she murmured, her voice low and musical, carrying over the frost-tipped streets. Milina purred, kneading her paws into the warmth of the woman's lap, aware that this closeness was not demanded, but freely given, and therefore infinitely precious. The day continued in this rhythm: exploration, observation, careful tasting of crumbs, and the reassurance of warmth and trust. Milina learned the timing of human routines, how the baker delivered fresh bread each morning, when merchants restocked their stalls, when doors were most likely to be open. She discovered vantage points from which she could watch without being seen: window ledges, stone walls, narrow rooftops where snow was soft, and even the frozen fountain's edge. Each observation sharpened her instincts, but also deepened her understanding of the town as a living, breathing organism, one she was now a part of. As evening fell, Milina returned to the alley, curled against the cloth the woman had laid for her, and watched the lanterns flicker to life. Snow began to fall again, lighter now, glinting like powdered glass in the lantern glow. She purred softly, reflecting on the day's journeys. She had discovered corners, hidden paths, secret nooks, and unexpected vantage points. But more importantly, she had learned that exploration did not mean isolation. Each adventure brought her closer to understanding her place in the town, her relationship with the people, and the bond she shared with her human. Night deepened, blanketing the town in frost and silence. Milina perched on the windowsill of the woman's house, watching distant lights twinkle, lanterns swinging gently in the cold wind. The streets below were empty, save for the occasional bird or wandering cat, yet she felt no fear. She understood the rhythm of the town, the safety of warmth, and the presence of her human. She had ventured far from the alley where she had been born, yet each step had brought her closer to the truth she now held in her heart. The world could be cold, uncertain and dangerous, but it also held warmth, safety, and beauty, all waiting to be discovered with patience, courage, and careful observation. Milina closed her eyes, pressing her head against the window frame. Snow drifted down, settling on her fur, and she purred, the sound vibrating with contentment. Her town stretched wide and endless before her, a network of streets, rooftops, gardens, and alleys, each a part of the world she now claimed in quiet authority. She had survived, she had learned, and she had chosen her place within it. And in that soft, silver winter night, Milina purred a slow, satisfied rhythm, knowing that she was not merely a visitor, but a small, vital part of this living town. The first snowstorm celebration. Winter had fully claimed the town now. Thick snow blanketed rooftops, streets, and alleys, muffling the usual sounds of daily life and replacing them with a serene hush. Lanterns glowed faintly in the soft, drifting snow, casting warm pools of amber light across frozen cobblestones. Even the bakery, once a source of warmth and sustenance, seemed more inviting, its windows glowing against the cold, a beacon for any who sought comfort. To Milina, the little cat who had journeyed from alley shadows to warmth and trust, the town had become a living, breathing place of wonder and exploration. Every corner held a story, every roof a vantage point, every path a lesson learned. The morning of the first real snowstorm arrived gradually, as if the sky had decided to release all of its winter magic at once. Snowflakes tumbled thickly, dancing in the wind, twisting and turning before settling gently on stone, wood, and fur. Milina awoke with a shiver, the cloth beneath her slightly damp from the lingering chill of frost and mist. The hearth fire had dwindled overnight, leaving only a thin layer of warmth along the edges of the room, yet she felt no fear. The soft voice of the woman, already humming in the kitchen, and the steady rhythm of her presence provided more warmth than any fire could. Milina stretched and padded softly to the window, watching the storm unfold, her amber eyes wide and bright with wonder. This day felt different from any other. The snowstorm carried a sense of ceremony, a promise of celebration hidden within the silent falling of countless flakes. Milina's small heart beat with anticipation, though she could not yet name why. She watched the streets below, now partially obscured by swirling snow, and saw faint silhouettes moving carefully beneath the glow of lanterns. The townspeople, too, seemed aware of something special in the air, pausing their routines to admire the snow, brushing it from rooftops, or greeting neighbors with hurried but warm smiles. Life itself seemed slower, softer, more deliberate, as if the storm had asked the town to pause and reflect on the simple joys of winter. Milina's first excursion that morning took her to the bakery. As she navigated the snow-laden streets with practiced ease, leaping over frozen puddles and stepping carefully over ice-crusted patches. The scent of fresh bread wafted through the air, strong and comforting despite the cold, and she pressed herself close to the bakery wall, whiskers quivering as she anticipated her familiar morning meal. The door opened and the baker emerged, carrying a small basket filled with crumbs and crusts, bundled carefully in a cloth to keep them dry. His eyes twinkled when he saw Milina, and he set the basket near the wall before retreating inside to his warm ovens. Milina approached cautiously, sniffing the offerings. Hunger had become a measured companion rather than a relentless force, yet even now she could not resist the promise of warmth and nourishment. She nibbled at the crumbs, savoring each piece, letting the flavors remind her of all the mornings she had survived, all the nights she had endured, and all the trust she had earned. Once finished, she paused to lick her paws and tail, shaking lightly to rid her fur of the snowflakes that had settled during her journey. The woman appeared then, emerging from her small house with her shawl wrapped tightly and a basket in hand. She paused when she saw Milina at the bakery wall, smiling softly, and laid the basket down near the little cat. Inside were not just crumbs, but a collection of small treats: warm bread, soft cheese, a few herbs for taste, and a shallow bowl of milk, steaming faintly in the cold morning air. The gesture was deliberate, careful, full of intention. Milina approached cautiously, sniffed each item, and began to eat, savoring the abundance and the kindness that had become so familiar, yet never ordinary. The storm intensified as the day progressed. Snow fell thicker, whipping through the streets, bending branches and blanketing the town in white. Milina ventured beyond the alley and the bakery, curious to explore the paths she had observed in previous weeks but had never traveled fully. Her paws left delicate prints in the fresh snow, a network of tiny trails weaving between buildings, through narrow alleys, and over frozen bridges. The town, now largely hushed by the storm, seemed almost enchanted. transformed by winter into a quiet, magical realm. Milina felt exhilaration and comfort simultaneously, the thrill of exploration and the certainty of warmth and safety waiting at the end of each journey. She found herself at the central square, now transformed into a glittering expanse of ice and snow. The fountain, once frozen, now reflected the snowflakes in delicate patterns, shards of silver dancing in the lantern light. Birds hopped among the edges, their feathers puffed against the cold, and a few small animals ventured out from hidden nooks to forage. Milina watched them all, crouched low, fascinated by their energy, by the rhythm of life continuing despite the storm. She realized that winter, harsh and unyielding as it could be, also revealed beauty and resilience in ways other seasons did not. The woman appeared at the square a short while later, carrying a lantern in one hand and a small basket in the other. She paused when she saw Milina, kneeling in the snow, and called softly. The voice, low and melodic, carried across the winter air and drew Milina instantly. She padded quickly across the frozen cobblestones, leaping over shallow drifts of snow, and pressed close to the woman's legs. The warmth of proximity, the safety of trust, and the gentle energy radiating from the woman were a balm against the chill of the storm. Milina purred softly, head brushing against the woman's hand, tail curling in satisfaction. And together they moved through the town, weaving between snow-laden buildings, through narrow streets, past quiet market stalls, and beneath lanterns glowing softly through drifting flurries. Milina observed the townspeople now, their faces flushed from the cold, eyes bright with delight, children laughing as they rolled snow into small balls, merchants shouting friendly greetings, neighbors exchanging bread and bundles of firewood. Life in the storm was vibrant, full, and rich, yet it maintained a gentle rhythm, a cadence that allowed the little cat to explore without fear, to pause and rest without anxiety, to feel the slow unfolding of warmth, community, and belonging. By late afternoon, the snow had reached a depth that made travel slower, yet more enchanting. The townspeople began to light candles in their windows, and the warm glow of hearth fires escaped through cracks and doors. Milina and the woman returned to the bakery and then to the alley, where the cloth and shallow bowl awaited as always. Milina drank carefully, savored a few crumbs, and then stretched on the cloth, tail curled neatly, eyes half closed in comfort. The storm outside continued, winds whistling and snow dancing through the lantern light, yet inside the alley, the warmth of trust and companionship created a sanctuary that no winter could breach. Evening deepened, the storm now a lullaby of falling snow and distant gusts. Milina perched on the windowsill of the woman's house, fur fluffed against the cold, tail curled around her small body, eyes reflecting the soft glow of lanterns and hearth fires. She observed the town, silent and serene under layers of white, and felt the satisfaction of belonging fully, of having survived, explored, learned, and chosen. Her journey from alley kitten to town explorer had reached a crescendo. She had discovered warmth, trust, community, and a sense of place in a world that once seemed vast, cold, and uncertain. As the woman joined her at the window, kneeling beside Milina, her soft voice humming a tune that resonated with the rhythm of the storm. Milina pressed close, the warmth of the woman's hand brushing over her fur, grounding her in the certainty of care. As the little cat purred long and low, the vibration carrying through her small body like a pulse of contentment. Together, they watched the storm, the town quiet except for the soft movement of snow, the occasional creak of timber, and the gentle crackle of distant fires. It was a perfect moment, a culmination of trust, exploration, warmth, and joy, a true celebration of life's small miracles in the heart of winter. Night fell fully, blanketing the town in soft darkness, illuminated only by lanterns, fires, and the glimmering snow. Milina, now confident, brave, and content, curled on the cloth in the alley near the hearthlit bakery. She purred softly, reflecting on the day's explorations, the kindnesses given freely, the warmth of her chosen companion, and the intricate, beautiful rhythm of life in the winter town. She had survived, she had learned, she had chosen, and she had discovered what it meant to be part of something larger than herself. And as the snow continued to fall thick and white, Milina closed her eyes, tail curled tight, heart full, and purred in the knowledge that she had found home. Not just a place, not just warmth, but trust, love, and belonging in the quiet, steady rhythms of a medieval winter town, forever marking the end of her journey and the beginning of a life lived fully, gently, and joyfully.
There's nothing else you need to listen for now. Just let your breathing stay slow and easy. If you're still awake, that's okay. And if you're drifting off, let yourself go gently. I'll be right here next time. Rest well, and good night.